English talking practice. Alex often felt a profound sense of despair when attempting to speak English, his tongue always tripping. The recurring thought, "Why I always make mistakes," haunted his every conversation, turning simple exchanges into daunting mental battles. He longed for fluency, yet this fear paralyzed him consistently. He meticulously studied grammar rules and diligently memorized vocabulary lists, spending countless hours immersed in textbooks. Despite this rigorous dedication, the moment he opened his mouth, uncertainty would creep in, making him hesitant. This frustrating pattern was a daily challenge. The desire to articulate his thoughts flawlessly was overwhelming, leading to an intense fear of imperfection. "I don't want to make mistake, but I always why," became his unspoken mantra, a silent lament echoing within his mind whenever English was required. His "my daily day's struggle" wasn't just about vocabulary. It was a deeply personal battle against self-consciousness and the perceived judgment of others. Each conversation felt like an examination, and he always felt he was failing, unable to perform. He would listen to native speakers, admiring their effortless flow and natural rhythm, feeling a pang of envy and discouragement. Their words seemed to glide so smoothly, a stark contrast to his own halting attempts and frequent grammatical errors. Friends suggested English talking practice, a simple phrase that felt like an insurmountable mountain to Alex. The mere idea of actively engaging in unscripted conversation brought a wave of anxiety, making him retreat further into himself. He tried to listen and practice, following advice he found online, yet the active practice part remained elusive. Listening was easy. Speaking was the terrifying hurdle he simply couldn't overcome, despite countless attempts. One evening, while listening to an English podcast, a speaker passionately declared, "The best way to learn English is not to fear mistakes." This statement resonated deeply, striking a chord with Alex's innermost linguistic anxieties. The speaker continued, emphasizing that mistakes are merely stepping stones on the path to fluency, essential components of the learning process. This fresh perspective began to subtly challenge Alex's long-held perfectionist beliefs about language acquisition. "Why you must listen," the speaker urged, "is to internalize the natural flow, the intonation, and the common phrases." Alex realized he had been listening passively, without truly absorbing the nuances of spoken English effectively. He understood that listening wasn't just about comprehension, it was about soaking in the language's very essence. This revelation felt like a tiny crack in the thick wall of his self-imposed linguistic limitations, offering a glimmer of hope. The podcast then delved into practical advice on how to talk to anyone in English, stressing the importance of starting small and consistently pushing past one's comfort zone, even if it felt awkward. This resonated with Alex. He decided to experiment with a new approach. If external conversations were too intimidating, perhaps internal ones, or even monologues, could be a safer initial step in his journey. The speaker also mentioned that confidence grows with every word spoken, regardless of accuracy. This simple truth started to dismantle Alex's previous conviction that only perfect English was acceptable for public interaction. He pondered his ingrained habit of self-correction, constantly replaying conversations in his head, mentally editing his pronunciation and word choices. This endless self-critique was exhausting and counterproductive. The idea of embracing imperfection, though liberating, was also terrifying. It required a complete paradigm shift, moving from a fear-based approach to one of adventurous exploration and joyful experimentation. That night, Alex made a silent commitment to himself. He would try a different strategy, one that prioritized speaking over absolute correctness, even if it felt clumsy at first. His first brave step was to start talking at home, a private sanctuary where no one could judge his mispronunciations or grammatical slips. This felt like a safe space for his fragile linguistic attempts. He began by narrating his daily activities aloud, describing mundane tasks like making coffee or tidying his room. "I am pouring water now," he would articulate slowly, carefully forming each English word. He spoke to his reflection in the mirror, conducting imaginary interviews and debates, feeling silly but determined. These solitary sessions were awkward but slowly started building a tiny bit of speaking stamina. Sometimes he would simply describe objects around his apartment. "This is a red book. It is on the wooden table. The light comes from the window." Simple sentences, repeated often, helped solidify basic structures. His initial attempts felt incredibly forced, unnatural even, as if his tongue was not accustomed to forming these new sounds. Yet, he persisted, reminding himself of the podcast's encouraging message. The fear of making mistakes, though still present, gradually began to shrink within the confines of his own home. He started viewing errors not as failures, but as opportunities for silent self-correction. He noticed subtle improvements. His mouth felt less stiff, his thoughts flowed a little more freely, and the retrieval of vocabulary seemed slightly less strenuous during these private practice sessions. These solo, English-talking practice sessions became a crucial part of his daily routine, like brushing his teeth or drinking his morning tea. Consistency was slowly becoming his new, quiet superpower. He continued to listen and practice diligently, but now his listening was active. He mimicked intonation, repeated phrases, and even tried to shadow speakers from his favorite English podcasts and videos. He discovered the joy of repeating idiomatic expressions, trying to embed them into his own nascent conversational patterns. This active engagement transformed passive listening into a powerful learning tool for him. After several weeks of consistent practice at home, a subtle shift occurred. The internal monologue, once filled with self-doubt, began to include phrases of encouragement and self-affirmation. He realized that "my daily day's struggle" was evolving. It was no longer a struggle against himself, but a proactive effort to conquer challenges, one small, imperfect sentence at a time. The persistent question, "I don't want to make mistake but I always why," still surfaced, but now he had an answer. "Because I am learning, and mistakes are proof of my effort and progress." This realization was incredibly liberating. It transformed his perspective from one of constant self-criticism to one of curious exploration and continuous linguistic improvement, which was a huge step. One day, at a local cafe, a tourist asked him for directions. Usually, Alex would freeze, his mind going blank, consumed by the fear of embarrassment and struggling to formulate correct answers. But this time, something felt different. He took a deep breath, and surprisingly, words began to form. They weren't perfect, but they were understandable, flowing out with unexpected ease. He pointed, gestured, and used simple English phrases, guiding the tourist clearly. The tourist smiled, genuinely grateful, and Alex felt an unfamiliar surge of quiet confidence blossom within him. This small, unplanned interaction was a monumental breakthrough. It proved that his "start talking at home" strategy was indeed effective, building a foundation he could now use externally. It was his first real experience of how to talk to anyone in English, without the crushing weight of self-doubt. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, but it had significantly diminished, feeling less powerful. He returned home that day feeling exhilarated, a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The conversation was brief, but its impact on his self-perception was profound and deeply encouraging. He understood now that fluency wasn't about avoiding mistakes, but about the willingness to make them and learn from them continually. Every error became a data point, guiding his future improvements. His "why I always make mistakes" question transformed into "how can I learn from this mistake?" A subtle yet powerful shift in mindset that propelled his learning forward dramatically. The journey was far from over. Fluency was a lifelong pursuit, but the biggest barrier, his own fear of imperfection, had been largely dismantled through consistent effort and self-compassion. He continued his English talking practice, now seeking out more opportunities to converse with native speakers, joining online language exchange groups and attending local meetups regularly. Each new conversation, whether awkward or smooth, added another layer of confidence and experience. He embraced the discomfort, knowing it was an essential part of his growth process constantly. His listen and practice routine became more sophisticated. He listened not just for meaning, but for nuanced expressions, trying to internalize the rhythm and melody of spoken English. He understood the best way to learn English was a combination of consistent input and courageous output, a dynamic interplay between listening and actively producing the language often. The "why you must listen" became clear. It provided the mental blueprint, the unconscious grammatical patterns and vocabulary that then emerged naturally during his attempts to speak English freely. His previous perception of the English learning journey was completely transformed into something manageable and truly wholesome. He recognized that the initial struggle, the "my daily days struggle," was a necessary phase, a crucible in which his resilience and dedication were forged through his efforts. The transformation was remarkable. Alex, who once dreaded every English interaction, now actively sought them out, eager to challenge himself and apply his improving language skills daily. His journey proved that language learning isn't about innate talent, but about perseverance, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a deep-seated belief in one's own capacity to learn and grow. The initial, paralyzing question, "I don't want to make mistake but I always why," had been replaced by a confident acceptance of the learning process itself, flaws and all. He still made mistakes, of course, but they no longer defined him or deterred him. Instead, they were signposts on his continuous path towards greater fluency and self-assured communication consistently. Alex often shared his story, encouraging others who felt stuck, emphasizing that the most important step is simply to start talking at home, no matter how small the beginning might seem. He explained that the initial discomfort of English talking practice would eventually give way to a liberating sense of progress and connection with people from around the world readily. His own experience was living proof that consistent listen and practice transforms dreams of fluency into tangible reality, provided one maintains a positive attitude and persistent effort always. The key, he stressed, was to redefine what failure meant. It wasn't about making errors, It was about not trying at all, about letting fear dictate one's learning journey and stopping progress entirely. Alex's story became an inspiration, a testament to the power of shifting one's mindset from fear of failure to an embrace of the learning process, empowering countless others to begin speaking. He truly mastered how to talk to anyone in English, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming brave enough to communicate, understanding that connection trumps flawless grammar every single time. And so, his daily struggle transformed into a daily triumph, a constant evolution where every word spoken, every mistake made, was a valuable step closer to his ultimate goal of true communicative freedom and confidence. He no longer feared the question, "Why I always make mistakes?" because he finally understood that making mistakes was an inherent part of his incredible, ongoing journey towards English fluency.